Hello, we're here for More Happier, a podcast where we get more happier. Hey, Elizabeth.
Hi, Gretch.
Today we'll talk about the happiness of being at home, and I will pose a question to Elizabeth about Fantasy Island, something that has been nagging at me for months. Elizabeth, what is something that is making you more happier these days?
Right. Well, Gretch, recently I talked about how going on an adventure was making me more happier because we talked before I was going to Puerto Rico and I was like, I need an adventure. I can't wait. I want to be on a tropical island. And now what's making me more happier is being home from that adventure. I was walking on air when I came back for days. I mean, I literally felt, when they say you're on cloud nine, I felt so buoyant.
Really?
I was just so happy to be home. And I mean, I know it is cliche to say, you know, if you want to feel good about being home, leave.
Right, yeah.
But it's true.
And what was it? Was it just your own bed? Well, you've got your puppies. So yeah, that must have made it get more exciting than usual, right?
Yes, of course I miss Jack and Adam, but I have to say the added thing of the puppies, and I could see on FaceTime that Daisy, our second puppy, was getting so big so fast. And I was like, I wanted to get home before she completely grew up.
Yeah.
And just being at home, like just walking out in the morning and being able to make my coffee in my French press, which I have been talking about on the show. Just being able to kiss Jack and just being able to sit at our fire pit. The night after I got home, Adam and I turned on the fire pit and went outside and had wine, and the dogs were rolling around and playing. And it just felt like the best place in the world. There is nowhere I would rather be. And that's just such a good feeling. But you can't get that feeling unless you leave. I told Adam, I said, I want you to leave for a significant amount of time just so you can have the joy of returning home.
Well, and also the thing about your adventure is, like, sometimes when people go away, they're like on a vacation. So they're staying in a nice place. They're having all these nice adventures. You're really working. And a lot of times, wherever you're working, it's just a little bit harder than it would be if you were in your normal setup. Plus, you were doing all this arduous work of shooting. So it was like really basically having a sleepover at your office for 3 weeks. So
that's exactly what it is, a sleepover at your office. By the way, I have heard of showrunners doing that, having a sleeping bag in their office and sleeping on the couch.
Really?
I have never done that.
At least you had a proper bed and a shower.
Yes, I had, and a gorgeous view of the ocean, by the way. So I can't complain. But yes, so anyway, that is making me so happy to be home, be with my family, be with my dogs, my bed, my torn, muddy robe that I have told you about. I love it all. I'm just basking in home, which is funny because having been home so much for so long, maybe that's adding to my love of home. So that's what's making me more happier. What is making you more happier?
Well, I was just delighted. Someone sent me a link to this quiz, and you know I love a quiz. Like I have my Four Tendencies quiz that I'm like so proud of. And this was a quiz by Adobe, and it's for your creative type. It says, discover your creative personality. There are 15 questions. You take it, and it gives you an answer. But what I really love about this quiz is, first of all, the questions are really non-obvious. They're kind of imaginative and unexpected, and you kind of have to use your creativity even to understand how to think about the questions. So the questions were very thought-provoking. And then, you know, I'm writing this book about the five senses. And the way they suggest texture, the way sound is used, the way they show movement, it delights the eye. The ear is so pleased. You feel like you're touching things, even though you're just watching something moving on your screen. It is so well done. There's all these little characters. And in between the questions, there's stuff that moves around that's sort of suggestive of what the question was. And I went through and checked the quiz and answered all the opposite ways because I just was like, ooh, what did I miss the first time? I wanted to see, I saw it. Funny. I saw it when the pinball ball went shooting down a very straight line. I'm like, ooh, what happens if you pick the other answer? And so I got to see what the other responses generated because it was so fun. So Elizabeth, I got you to take it, but what did you get? What was your answer?
So Gretch, yes, of course I took the quiz immediately as soon as you told me about it. Yeah. And I got innovator.
Okay, I'm going to read you what it says for innovator because it's interesting. The creative strength is the ability to generate new ideas and innovative solutions. Well, that's a perfect description of your job, I would say. Your untapped potential is mastering the art of executing ideas. Well, that's very funny because you keep talking about like, I want to do these fiction podcasts and I want to do this, I want to do that. You have a lot of ideas that you want to execute on.
Yes.
Your ideal collaborator is the maker. That's another creative type. I will say that is not my creative type. So, oops, too bad. And this is what it says. So tell me if you think this sounds accurate. The innovator sees everything through the lens of possibilities and progress, problems and solutions. You feel the most yourself when you're using your intellectual and creative powers to solve problems and dream up new and improved ways of doing things. Your attention is largely focused on the world around you, and you're constantly probing its structures and systems to find ways to push things forward. Change may be scary for most people, but for you, it's fuel for your creative fire. A pioneer and trailblazer, you're here on this planet to light the way into the future, helping the rest of us learn to adapt and thrive in times of rapid and unpredictable change. You're a natural risk taker with an insatiable desire to expand boundaries and explore uncharted territories. You're not one to do things the way they've always been done. You thrive when working in service of large-scale change and progress, and your talents equip you well for roles that allow you to experiment and play with ideas. Okay, here comes the beware, all right? There's always a beware. Beware when the initial spark of inspiration starts to wear off and you feel tempted to move on to the next big thing a little too quickly. Innovators tap their greater potential when they learn to master the art of the follow-through. By finding joy in the messy middle of a venture, not just the excitement of the beginning or the satisfaction of reaching the finish line, you'll become a true creative powerhouse. Seek out creative partnerships with maker types who have the stamina and dedication to take any idea from concept to completion. Seeing the maker in action reminds you that taking it one step at a time is much more effective creative strategy than racing to the finish line. I would say that sounds pretty accurate.
Some of it goes, I don't think I'm like a rebel type, which some of this suggests, but I do think a lot of it sounds accurate and definitely needing to deal with the messy middle.
But that's interesting. You do collaborate. You have somebody else, and you and Sarah often talk about how you help each other persist.
Yes. And in fact, of course, now I want her to take this and see what she is.
Right.
But that's very interesting. And Gretch, what did you get?
So I'm the thinker. I'll read this. Now, I do think that there might be a little bit of an element of cold reading here where it's like, would everybody say that everything fits them?
Yes.
So I would want to like go through it with a fine-tooth comb and examine it that way to be like, well, how accurate do I really think this is? And how much of it is just sort of generalities? Nevertheless, I think any quiz gets you thinking. It gets you thinking. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm the thinker, and the creative strengths are intellectual curiosity, ability to find and create meaning. The untapped potential is bridging theory and practice and applying ideas in real life. My ideal collaborator.
That's you. I mean, for sure.
That is my mission. My ideal collaborator is the adventurer, which is not you.
No.
Okay, so it says, for the thinker, the examined life is truly the only one worth living. Ever the perpetual student, well, that's true. You experience the world as an endless opportunity for learning, discovery, and truth-seeking. Driven by an insatiable intellectual curiosity, the thinker makes the quest for knowledge and truth a lifelong pursuit. With all those big questions and abstract thinking, you've got some serious electrical activity going on in that brain of yours. Few things satisfy your inquisitive mind more than a well-formulated question or an elegant solution, and you're content to spend much of your time alone, studying topics that fascinate you and engaging with your inner world of ideas. I gotta say, this is sounding pretty accurate.
I was gonna say, Gretch, this would not be me, and it's very you, so.
It says your greatest gifts are your sense of wonder and depth of perception. You can see the big picture and the deeper meaning of almost any situation in a way that few others can. Your biggest challenges, getting out of your head and learning to balance theory with practice. Try not to get too caught up in concepts and abstractions. Dear thinker, great ideas are meant to be brought to life. Seek out the company of adventurer types who provide the perfect counterbalance to your introspective and analytical nature. The infectious energy and playful spirit of the adventurer remind you to embrace the joys of creation and to not be afraid to get your hands a little dirty in the process. Interesting.
It does sound like you, I have to say. I think yours is more you than mine is me.
Yeah.
But mine also had some elements that are very me.
Yeah. But I also think you're kind of a broader personality than I am. I think I'm very specific, and I feel like you're more encompassing of many different, and maybe that's part of why you like your work, is that
Right. Changes all the time.
And you play many different roles and tap into many, many different strengths. So anyway, yes. I love the quiz. And partly I like it just because it is just from a sensory perspective, given that it is just happening on a screen, I thought they did just the most amazing job with color and texture and sound.
Yes. They took the idea of taking a quiz to the next level. It's not question. Yes. It's a whole experience to take this quiz.
And I'm going to do a quiz for my Five Senses book. And I have to say, like, my mind is on fire because I'm like,
Gretchen, that was the main thing I was thinking when I took the quiz. I'm like, oh my God, I bet Gretchen is going nuts over this.
Yeah.
Over these graphics.
No, because it's like, it's just showing me what's possible, right?
Yes.
Anyway, very cool.
Yes. That's cool. Yeah. You always like anything where it's know yourself better.
I sure do.
Okay, Gretch, coming up, we're going to share some quality screen time. But first, this break. Okay, Gretch, we are back with our quality screen time. We're each sharing something that we think is worth watching on a screen. And you go first.
Okay, yeah, this is another screen thing. And this is something that my daughter Eleanor showed me because she loved it. In fact, she took a screenshot of it and made that what do you call it on your phone? Your lock screen.
Wallpaper.
Yeah. So this is called Meditative Snow Monkeys Hang Out in Hot Springs. So this is a short film from National Geographic. It's a 3-minute video, and it is the most beautiful, calming, meditative thing. If you have jangled nerves or you're feeling stressed out or you like, I just need a moment of zen, it's these beautiful snow monkeys, and they're sitting in these hot springs, and they're just in the water, experiencing the water. One of them keeps tapping on the bubbles with a finger, which is something that I always do when I'm in something that has bubbles floating on the water. So I really identified with that. But it's just this light mist, and they're just sitting there. And this one snow monkey where his eyes are sort of closing slowly, like he's in deep thought or maybe drifting off to sleep. And there's this very, very, I don't even know if it's music, there's sound. And it's just like the beauty of nature. So I highly recommend.
Yeah, it makes you just go, oh my gosh, that exists in the world.
I know.
Out there somewhere, these snow monkeys are lounging in a hot tub, basically, just enjoying life. It's very affirming.
I picture them with like a beer in like a cozy or whatever. Yeah, like kicking back.
Yeah.
I immediately wanted to read a whole thing. Like, do they really just go sit in there the way a person would go sit in there?
It sure looks like it.
It sure looks like it.
And they're so cute. They look like they're wearing fur hoods.
Yes.
Yeah, it really is just makes you feel good about the world when you watch these snow monkeys.
It's just beautiful nature for 3 minutes. Okay, Elizabeth. Now, yours quality screen time, I believe, is of a very different sort. Many kinds of things can make us feel happier. And now we're going to shift gears.
Yes, I'm taking a hard right turn here. To a Netflix show called Love is Blind.
My daughters are obsessed with this.
Okay, yes. So, I love reality, and Love is Blind, this is its second season in the U.S., and I have to say second season is much better than first season. I think, Gretch, do we have the description so people know what it is before we talk about it?
Okay, so I will read the description. It says, the series follows 30... Okay, and it is improbable. Like, you just have to say, this is an improbable situation. You just have to, like, go with it. The series follows 30 men and women hoping to find love. In 10 days, in a speed dating format, the men and women date each other in different pods where they can talk to each other but not see each other. Whenever they decide, the men are able to propose to the woman they want to marry. Yep, marry. After the proposal and meeting face-to-face for the first time, the engaged couples head to a couples retreat. During this trip, they spend time getting to know their partners and meet the other couples participating in the experiment. Following the couples retreat, the engaged couples move to the same apartment complex. While at the apartment, they all meet their partners' families and explore their partners' living conditions. On the day of the wedding, the engaged couples carry out wedding ceremonies and make their final decisions at the altar about whether to split up or get married, answering the question, is love blind? Okay, so this is a preposterous setup, but intriguing.
Yes. And there's a couple of things that I think work really well about it, Gretch. One is the people are all from the same city.
They live in the same city.
They live in the same city, right? So unlike The Bachelor, where you have one person's from Philadelphia and another person lives in LA. And so being a couple basically means completely uprooting somebody's life.
Yeah.
These people can all continue their jobs, continue the same friend groups. Which to me makes it actually more practical than other kinds of dating shows. And it's fun. Some of these couples last. I mean, there are people from the first season who got married and are still married. And, it's just always fun to watch people dating.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest.
And like meeting their families. Because I have to say, Eliza and Eleanor love this show. So they got me watching. I think I've only watched 6 or 7 episodes, and I haven't seen the finale of season 2, so I don't know what happens.
I won't give anything away.
Okay, but I have to say, I am on the edge of my seat, and I keep saying to Eliza and Eleanor, don't watch it without me, but we have to watch it soon because I really want to know what comes up. Also, one of the things I think is really good about it is the people's families and friends are just say like, this is bonkers. Like, what the heck are you doing? This makes no sense whatsoever. They're deeply shocked and appalled and just think the people are just, what are they thinking? Which I thought made it more realistic. It wasn't like everybody's going along with the fiction, like, oh, this is just this, this is just a thing people do. They're like, what are you? Somebody's friend was like, he's like, you got to get out of this.
Yeah.
Even as artificial as it is, it's like, you can't stop watching.
Yes. And then off of Love is Blind, Gretch, I also wanted to bring up that there is Love is Blind Japan and Love is Blind Brazil. So I've started watching the Japan version, and it's really interesting because it's a cultural look at dating in Japan. Obviously not what most people are doing to date, I assume, in Japan, but it's different. People are different, and that's really interesting. And I'm sure Brazil is different yet.
Yeah, sure.
So it's just fun to watch. And also, like all things, I think it's just nice to be able to talk with people about something. And this is a phenomenon. Yeah. So it's just fun to talk about it with colleagues.
Absolutely. We've talked about that before on the Happier podcast. How sometimes you watch a show just because it's something to talk about.
In the zeitgeist.
It's in the zeitgeist, and it's like an easy way to connect with people. But I have to say, I've got these 2 daughters, and it was really interesting because sometimes you can talk about values and mistakes and cautionary tales and things. It's easier when you're talking about something like a TV show than when you're talking about what somebody and her friends are doing.
Right.
And I did get into some really interesting, thoughtful conversation with Eliza and Eleanor about, did you think that this person's parent brought up an interesting point? Or if somebody had done that, this is how I interpret that. I think that's a big red warning sign that this person is getting cold feet. What do you think? And so I thought it did allow us to have sort of a deeper conversation about relationships, love, dating, marriage, all those complicated subjects in a way that felt lighthearted and fun and low stakes. And yet we could talk about some profound things. So that made me happier watching it as well.
I also will mention, Gretch, that even the people who don't end up meeting someone, because not all the people even end up engaged, but all the people who do end up in a relationship and it doesn't go the distance, they always feel like they've discovered a lot about themselves and their own, what they're looking for and self-knowledge, because it is such an intense experience.
It would be interesting to do it, not to get married, but just like, what would it be like to talk to a bunch of people in this very intense way? It's an interesting experience. But listen, I also have to imagine that for you. I mean, you've been going through this like intensely, when you're shooting, it's just so all-encompassing. Is this just something that lets you step out of your head?
Yes, it definitely makes me happier to be able to completely turn off the show that I'm working on and watch something that, it has nothing to do with what I'm doing. It really relaxes me. So I'm sure I'm enjoying it even more than I would normally because of that. But I also think listeners would get a kick out of it.
Right.
And you know what else makes me happier about it, Gretchen, is that it's finite. So the Housewives that I love so much, I mean, they've been going on like 10, 12 years, some of them.
It's like infinity and beyond.
Yes, this is like a certain number of episodes and then it's done. And it makes me feel more relaxed that I sort of know there's an end point.
Right.
And it's not just going to be going on forever.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Quality screen time.
Quality screen time.
I do love quality screen time.
It's such good stuff.
Such good stuff. And now Spotlight on a tool. So we were just talking about how I love a Know Yourself Better question. I do love anything that helps us know ourselves better. And I have my Know Yourself Better journal. I'll put a link in the show notes to that, to the shop. And we got this interesting email from a listener about how she's using her Know Yourself Better journal. And I have to say, this is such a creative use. I would never have thought of this, and I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, so this comes from Sally. She says, I wanted to share how I'm using the Know Yourself Better journal to connect with my dearest friend. She moved to the other end of the country at the start of the pandemic. So far, we have done a good job of staying close and keeping up to date with all the little goings on in our lives through phone calls and texts. However, what we did miss from living in the same town was our weekly walks along the river, followed by coffee, where we would discuss the deeper issues that were affecting us, our families, or the world. This year, I gave us both a Know Yourself Better journal, and now we meet every weekend on Zoom and discuss our reflections on that week's question. It always takes us into other questions, and before you know it, 2 hours have passed. Before we hang up, we allow ourselves to turn the page and read the question together for the next week ahead, allowing that question to marinate until we meet up again. Thank you for creating the tool that allows us the opportunity for deeper connection. As an added bonus, it was on my 22 for 22 list to schedule these Zoom catch-ups with her, so also a tick for me there. Oh, that's so great.
I mean, I think this is such a great use. It's a great way to know yourself better and to draw closer to somebody else. This could almost be a group. I'm always trying to get people to do groups. And some people don't want to do a book group. It's kind of a journaling group, but it's more contained.
Yes. And I like that at the end of each Zoom, they turn the page and read the next question. It's like kind of opening a little gift at the end of their Zoom.
Well, and the thing is, sometimes even with the people that you're really close to, it's very hard to get that deeper level of engagement. It's really hard to talk about profound things. I think that's one reason people like book clubs is that often will get you to a more profound place. And I think this is a great way to talk about something that's unexpected and maybe a little bit more intimate than you would have even with a really, really good friend. So I thought this was brilliant.
Yes. And Gretch, what kinds of questions are in there?
Oh, they're such fun questions. If you could magically add one more room to your house, what would you use it for? What do you regret? What's the most important secret that someone has confided in you? Are you good at keeping secrets?
These are fun.
If you're feeling blue, how do you give yourself a happiness boost? Do you prefer a day with no plans or one that's highly scheduled? What would your perfect day look like? Yeah, so they're really fun. And I think it would be great to do it with a friend or a family member.
Yes, party game.
Party game. If this sounds interesting to you, you can go to happiercast.com/shop and check out the Know Yourself Better journal. And Elizabeth, there's been something I've been meaning to ask you. I've been dying to ask you. Okay, so Fantasy Island.
Yes.
And I've been thinking about this, and I don't know why I kept forgetting to ask you. Elena Roarke, who's now the head of Fantasy Island, is the grandniece of Mr. Roarke, the iconic Mr. Roarke.
Yes.
The grandniece feels very specific. So why is she the grandniece?
Okay. Well, the grand is in there age-wise.
Yeah, right.
It wouldn't make sense for her to be the niece.
Okay.
And the reason she's a niece, say, instead of a daughter, which maybe is what you're wondering, is because in our mythology, a Roarke is always the guardian of the island, is the host, but it doesn't have to be a direct descendant. So we didn't want to say it's handed down necessarily father to daughter, son, and so on. We wanted to say anyone in the Roarke family could be called upon to do this role.
So it's kind of like there must always be a Stark in Winterfell.
Yes, exactly.
What Stark? Open.
Yes. Oh. And Mr. Roarke chose Elena. He thought she was the one who was best suited for this role.
Okay, related. So, what is Mr. Roarke's first name? It's Elena Roarke. What's his first name?
Yes. Gretchen, we have never been able to figure that out.
Are you kidding?
I have tried. I don't think he has a first name. If you look on the internet, people just call him Mr. Roarke or Roarke.
But that kind of fits his personality.
Right. He's very mysterious.
Very mysterious, very
Arlena
formal.
Roarke is mysterious, but not as mysterious.
Yeah, she's not as formal.
Mr. Roarke. No.
Yeah, love it.
So isn't that funny?
That's really fun.
As far as we know, he does not have a first name, or Roarke is his first name, and people call him. Some people think he's Mr. Roarke. I don't know.
Oh, it's fun.
Yes, Gretch, I am filled with information about Fantasy Islands, old and new. Come to me with your Fantasy Island questions.
I love that I have a direct line. All my curiosity can be satisfied.
All right, coming up, Gretchen will share the quotation, but first this break. Okay, Gretchen, you love quotes. That's your thing. End us with a great one.
Okay, this is a quotation that has made me happy every time I've read it. And this comes from Surprised by Joy, a memoir by C.S. Lewis. He writes, and he's talking about his childhood here. Once in those very early days, my brother brought into the nursery the lid of a biscuit tin, which he had covered with moss and garnished with twigs and flowers so as to make it a toy garden or toy forest. That was the first beauty I ever knew. What the real garden had failed to do, the toy garden did. It made me aware of nature, not indeed as a storehouse of forms and colors, but as something cool, dewy, fresh, exuberant. As long as I live, my imagination of paradise will retain something of my brother's toy garden. Isn't that beautiful? Yes. So, Elizabeth, are you feeling more happier?
I'm feeling so much happier, Gretch. Thank you, Chuck.
Yes, thanks, Chuck.
Get in touch with us. Gretchen's on Twitter at Gretchen Rubin, and I'm at Elizabeth Kraft. Our email address is podcast@GretchenRubin.com. And for everything related to this episode, links, photos, and more, go to happiercast.com. Bye, Gretch.
Bye, Elizabeth. Remember, the best time to start a happiness project is 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
Gretch, I like your shirt.
Oh, yeah. I went shopping with Eliza and I picked it out. And I like your shirt. You're wearing your
Gretch,
onward and upward.
I'm wearing swag.
Yes.
Yes. Always.
Yes. Excellent. From the Onward Project.